First wreck I was ever in with me driving. Is that what
Yeah,
you're
let's go with
asking?
that one.
Okay.
Let's start there. Let's just narrow this down to ones you were driving.
I hit a curb and blew 2 tires
Yeah, I remember that.
when I was 16.
If I remember your dad saying this, he's like,
16.
I don't know what happened. The curb, Dad just jumped out and got my tires.
And
So,
actually, I was a self-punisher.
yeah, you are.
And so I was a self-punisher.
Yeah.
And so I felt so bad
Yeah.
that I went for a full year before I asked my
But
dad
you've gotten over that self-punishing thing
if
for
we
wrecking
could-
cars.
if we could get the tires fixed.
And her dad said literally, I was just waiting on her to want to get it fixed. She waited for a year before she asked because she was
I
inflicting,
felt so bad. I felt
broke
so
the rules
badly.
of the road.
I did.
Okay, that was the first one. What was
That
next?
was the first one.
There's one in here in particular I'm
I know
trying
what
to
you're
get at.
trying to get to.
Let's
Yes.
just keep going.
I
What
was
was
just,
next?
stretching this out. for
Well,
you
then there's a
guys.
time that I jumped the curb. Yeah, okay. What was the next one?
The next one was I was 18.
Same car?
Same car.
Same car. It was the same car.
Same car.
Yeah.
It was possessed.
Yeah.
the
That's
car's
what
fault.
she said. Her dad was always like, Joey's acting like the car possessed. Curbs just jump out and steal the tires.
I was driving
Yes.
and you were in the passenger seat
Yes, I was.
and we were having an
Innocently in the passenger. I was sick.
argument. And we were
Remember,
having
I was sick.
You were sick.
I was sick and you were driving me home.
And
Yeah. For letting you drive. Yeah. So
yes.
I was sick.
And we were
arguing.
And I came over the crest of the hill
Yes.
on Shearer Road
Shear Road in Lee Summit, Missouri.
in Lee Summit, Missouri.
Yeah. Not that matters.
And there was a car coming
Yes.
and I swerved to miss it.
Yes.
And I hit a curb and flipped it.
No, you
end
did. There was
over
no
end.
curb involved in that
No,
one.
no. I hit the
It was called a big ditch.
Ditch.
Yes.
But
There
it was
no
the
curb.
it was
It was the huge
embankment.
8-foot embankment. Yes.
Yes,
It's not a
of the
really
ditch.
big curb. Okay, I get it. Like an 8-foot curb. I got you. Okay. Yes. And then what happened?
I flipped the car end over
End over end.
Yes.
With your soon-to-be husband sitting in the front seat.
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Then what happened?
Then the fire truck came.
Yes. Then all the
The
paramedics.
most embarrassing,
Yeah.
one of the
Okay,
most
it's a little
embarrassing
graphic. Yeah.
moments of my life
Yes.
was they set me up and cut my shirt open
Right.
to make sure that I was okay.
There was no bleeding or bruising
Yeah.
internally.
That was
Yeah.
I was mortified.
Perverted firemen. Yeah. Yeah. Just kidding. They were trying to save a life. They were trying to save a life. But yeah.
And then they took us to the hospital.
Where was I at during all that?
You were on a stretcher.
I was on a stretcher with my neck contraction. Yeah, that was great. Now I remember that. I forgot all about that.
And there
I
was,
laid on that board for how many hours?
because they couldn't get a hold of your parents.
My
You were a
parents were out of
minor.
town, and I was a minor. You were. That's where the cougar thing didn't work for us so well. She couldn't sign for me, but my parents were out of town. They could not get permission. I laid on a backboard with neck contraction for probably 6 hours.
At least, and
What's the best part of the story, though?
you had glass.
And I had
in your-
glass on my back
in
the
your
whole
back.
time. So, because I had, it was really the grace of God we even
really
lived
was.
in many cases. Because
Yes.
I don't think I was wearing a seatbelt.
Neither one of us were.
Yeah, and I remember looking at the steering wheel, and it was like literally rolled back where she had hit it so hard, and no air. I think were there airbags, but very minimal. But I had turned and hit my back on the windshield. So you can imagine sitting in front of the seat, completely turned end over end. I'm talking like end over end. Ended up upside down, and in the hospital, and absolutely both of us walked out of the hospital without. I just had cuts on my back, and I think maybe in my knee I had a cut. I had to get stitches, and that was it. So, well, welcome to the table. Welcome to the table. So glad that you're here today, and we have been just chatting a bit about memories of driving and things of that nature. And so today, we're glad you're with us, and hopefully this is helpful. It feels like it's been a while since we've been in here just because of doing stuff from the platform and whatnot. So it's good to be back into it and hanging out together and talking. And we love to connect with you. So jump on and make the comments and connect and smash the like buttons and whatever that is. Because as my good friend Pastor Chris says, it's going to be cool. So, and it's good vibes. Oh, it's really cool. I like that message. Did you come up with that? That was the Bible, Chris. And so anyhow, today we wanted to talk about things we would do if we were 20 years old today. What would we do differently? What would we things we would tell our 20-year-old selves.
Oh,
Um, and this could be a scary one. This could
so
be
many things.
so many things. But we just want to talk about, like, obviously for us, we were married very young, and that has its. I think it's certainly, we've talked about this for years. Has its blessings, and it has its challenges as well.
Yes.
The blessing in this is, like, we're not like some 35-year-olds, 40-year-olds that get married. Nothing wrong with that, because the average age now is like 30 to get married. Like, you kind of have to learn how to, like, mesh your two lives together.
Yeah. We didn't have lives
We
when we
were
got married.
lifeless. We were losers. Yeah, like, no, we were at 18 and 19. I mean, we were
Yeah.
basically straight out of high school, and we had
Yep.
been dating for a year and a half. So,
Yes.
I mean, we'd integrated families. I mean, all of that stuff, and our beliefs were pretty connected up. So there's a
Uh-huh.
lot of similarities for us. So we didn't have to,
Yeah.
like, unwind a whole bunch of your friends, my friends.
Yeah.
You had friends, I didn't have friends, and so that was really easy. You just need to get rid of your friends, and we were good. So, but, so for us, it's probably a little bit different sort of scenario, but with it
Mhm.
challenges, no doubt,
Yeah.
because I just don't know, in a male especially, that the prefrontal cortex is developed at a level. Not saying you can't, but, like, you're going to have to really have some grace and whatnot for that age. Being
Yes.
married. The good news is, I mean, we've now been married 32 years, going on 33. Is that right? This year?
33 this
Yeah.
year.
So we've lived a lot
33
of life.
next month.
Yeah, next month. Can you believe that? And 33 years. I mean, that represents almost 2/3 of our lives at this point. I mean, it's clicking up there. And so we've been together almost twice as long as we've been apart, in terms of marriage, and especially when you consider dating. But there are certainly things in ministry. We also, went into ministry at a very young age, and many challenges around. But that would complicate it, man, even far more so, in terms of being 20 something, and now not only having the responsibility of a marriage, but now having a responsibility of ministry on some level,
Yeah.
and that sort of thing together. Um, so a little bit different, but I think there are principles that, probably, if we were just to go back and sit down with Waylon and Dana at that age, what would we say to them, in that conversation? So, are you ready?
Yeah.
All right, you got one.
I would give me a Valium and say, just
You
calm.
should be on
You
drugs.
should calm down.
Yeah, my gosh, so aside from taking drugs,
Right.
um,
I mean that in
yeah,
like
I think it
I was very uptight.
yeah, well, I think it speaks to emotional health.
Right.
That was not a conversation of those days,
No.
really.
No.
You only went to counselors if you had problems, which everybody had problems, but it was like you really had to have problems to go
Right.
to like, you're at a crisis
Right.
before you go to a counselor in
Yes.
those days.
Yes. There was no preventative
Yeah,
type like deal with emotion.
right, right.
It was
Or understand,
right. It was
or
just
talk about families of origin, or talk about, the thinking. It was all very. And again, maybe this is why we're. I don't know if we're lopsided in this way, but in this season of our life, we're very passionate about the emotional health part of it. I think because it was
Yeah.
so undone, for us. I mean,
Yes.
and we had great parents. Both of us have great parents. We had a great church. I mean, as good as you could expect. You know what I mean? The typical. I
Yeah.
mean,
It was normal to us.
it was normal. Yes, that's a good way of saying it. It was normal to us, and probably
Yeah.
normal to many people in that era
Yeah.
of the church world.
Yeah.
Um, Friends, family. It was all just pretty status quo. I mean, and that
Mhm.
sort of thing.
Mhm.
Um, but I think that, my question would be this: why were you? And I mean this all sincerity. I'm not being funny, but why were you so uptight? Like, what was going on?
I think just you know, being raised in church and then
Yeah,
going straight into ministry,
yeah,
I felt a tremendous amount of pressure to do things right.
yeah,
And really, especially in that era, there was not even discussions of grace
no,
toward anything.
right,
Like there was no like you just needed to like live holy
yeah,
and you better just deal with your sin. And
yeah,
there were no
yeah,
conversations about um hey, let me walk through this with you. Let me
yeah,
help you. And I'm not even talking like
right.
like what we would have considered back then, like
Gross, negligent stuff. Yeah.
gross
Just
sin. Like,
struggles.
oh, I'm
Like you couldn't talk
embracing
struggles.
this. I think,
I never heard my pastor ever talk about a struggle he had.
oh no,
You know what I mean?
no,
And I'm not even talking like, and here's the thing, there obviously, as I look at it now, go like, there had to be struggles. Like,
well, I think we saw struggle.
yeah, yeah. Well, isn't that funny that people see your struggles even if you don't talk about them? But
Yes,
yeah, I mean, there were challenges, no doubt. And he was a very integrous, godly person. I'm not saying,
yes,
I mean, top 10, I mean, like great influence, kind of guy you could follow.
right,
But it was also the era of the day. We didn't talk about that stuff.
yeah,
We never gave space. How are you doing? Um,
yeah.
feelings were foreign.
We didn't ask how people were doing
Yeah.
to know how people were doing.
Right.
It was like kind of like saying hello.
Yeah.
Like
Exactly.
you just
Right.
walk up and say, "How are you doing?" And the answer better be
Right. The only acceptable answer right now is good.
is
I'm
good.
great. I'm doing great.
Yeah.
So, but I think for you, your experience, we've talked a little bit about this. People who know us, like you came up from kind of more of a, I don't know if you call it fundamentalist. I guess on some level it was education, church. I don't want to
Mhm.
name any, traditions or whatnot, but it was this very women are what would I don't want to put words in your mouth. Women
Uh-huh.
are
Subservient.
subservient.
Mhm.
Women are certainly not in ministry.
No.
Certainly they're there to make a good home. I mean, to keep a good home. To
Uh-huh.
and again, if that's what your passion is as a woman, great.
Uh-huh.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Uh-huh. But that was the fullness of
That
what
was
the
it.
expression
Yeah,
could be.
you could never have any real expression outside of that. Even outside the church, it was like if you went to work,
That
it
was
would have been
like,
somewhat.
oh,
If you went to work and
oh.
didn't still do all those other things for your family and your husband, you were
Well,
somehow
I
diminished.
think where I grew up, um, if you even worked outside of the home, that was kind
Frowned
of a,
upon,
yeah,
right?
like a, oh, you have to go do that.
Yeah,
Like, oh, poor you, you
yeah.
have to go.
Or you're just too you're not ready to be a mom. You're too ambitious, and you're just out there trying to cut your way. Which, by the way, I mean you did stay home with our kids, I believe by choice. I think primarily. I mean you always worked here and there when it made sense, but
Mm-hmm.
so there's nothing wrong with that season of us going, hey, this is
Mm-mm.
our kids.
Mm-hmm.
Probably need us in this age. Then, of course, that was a little bit later for us, but
Mm-hmm.
and then
Mm-hmm.
once they started getting into school and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But so you grew up in that kind of environment, which sort of really probably exaggerated the uptightness a little bit
Oh yeah.
about who you can be and who you are and what your role is. And
Well, I think just you know how I grew up, but also when you couple that with I really truly did have a desire to please God
yeah,
and
yeah, all rooted in good places.
be everything that God wanted me to be. But then when you struggle with like, how do I how, how do I be mad at you?
Yeah,
And because
right,
you're going to get mad at your spouse.
sure,
You're gonna have things happen in life that make you mad, make you sad, make you
right, right.
whatever, and
What's a healthy way to those
right,
conversations are having. So we have that working in the background, and
yeah,
so it's like this constant pressure cooker for you.
yeah,
In terms of maybe I don't know, I don't want to say performance or performing the expected whatever.
right.
Meanwhile, on my side of it, there's a pressure cooker of being an idiot. Just in general
I
terms.
just want to say I did not say that.
What's that? Oh, I am saying that. Like
Okay.
I'm full on aware of what an 18-year-old, 19-year-old, and I mean that ignorance is probably a better word than idiot, but like
Right.
complete ignorance. I think that if I could sit down with a 20-year-old me who was maybe having children, or I'm assuming a lot, maybe
Yeah.
they're, but I just think it's so important that parents, and again, I'm not putting this on anybody's parents, but that it is so shifted and changed. Now, again, I know there's a lot of, funniness out there about like swinging the pendulum the other way. Like, Johnny, is your anger a 3? Like, okay.
Right.
But I mean, we never really talked in our upbringing, at least from my perspective, about creating space for emotion for us to learn how to process that in
Right.
a healthy way
Right.
rather than either, hide it, suck it up, or eventually
Or
explode.
go to your room
Go to your room.
until you get it under
Yeah.
control.
And again, that wasn't me. Yours was go to your room to get under. So if you get angry, you need to go away.
Yeah.
Which is probably why whenever we would get in fights, you would leave. Like you would
Yes.
get in the car and lay rubber down the street. Man, I'm telling you, like this woman could drive NASCAR. I'm telling you. And it was amazing that she was Tokyo drifting in Lee Summit, Missouri, if you know what I'm talking about. Like it was intense. I'm sure her neighbors thought, like, what is that? Is he married to Dale Earnhardt or something? Like, good Lord, that's a race car driver.
I
Yeah,
know who Dale
I
Earnhart
know.
is. I just don't think I look at all like
Well,
him.
you drive like him. That's the thing I'm getting at, babe. So, but you know, the thing is like, that's probably all connected. It's funny how we just keep doing the things that we learned. We just grow.
Yeah.
We just multiply it, you know, as we get older. And I think I would talk to 20-year-old me and be like, hey, you know, man, first of all, you're not going to do everything right with your kids. Number one, just chill out. Number two, just have real conversations with
Mhm.
them about sex and about men and women and about, you know, just life in general
Mhm.
and how to create space for feeling things without it being out of control or
Right.
over. Like there's an overemphasis, I think, for sure.
Right.
You know, I was laughing one time because I saw someone make a comment on one of our things, like, and me talking about sharing my emotions with my wife, and it was some guy who made this comment who's like, "Can you imagine this?" He's talking about you. I don't know if you saw this, but I don't really pay attention a lot to this stuff. I just happened
Uh-huh.
to glimpse and catch this. I thought it was hilarious. He's like, "Can you imagine this guy going home and like being all emotional with his wife? You know, almost like empathizing for you, like because I'm such
Uh-huh.
a emotional loser." and and I wanted so bad to be like, we're doing just fine, bro. You know what I mean? Like you
Uh-huh.
don't have any idea. But I think we just are so men a lot of times are just so foreign in this area. We think
Uh-huh.
any display or caring for emotion is an overreach.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I wouldn't necessarily want to sit talk about emotions because I feel like we talk about more than that. But for us at 20, it would have been get some help, get some people that can have real conversations with you and walk through some stuff so that you realize it's not just you. You know what I mean? And some of what you're thinking is not actually what God's thinking, you know, and some things that people are putting on you are people. You know, it's not real. And I know through our journey, like the more we have shared and become like vulnerable and talked about stuff with whether it was a counselor or friends or each other, um, you know, people in our lives, the more honest we became, it's like all of that just pressure
Really
dissipated.
dissipated.
It's
Yeah.
just like, okay, now I'm not dealing with this big, you know, flaming shame ball, you know. I know it's great.
That was a
Uh,
fabulous choice of
it
words.
was well, thank you. And so, you know, I'm not dealing with this thing that I think it's about. Now I really can deal with what it's about. And oh, by the way, it's not that big a deal. Like I'm not the only one and I may process through this and tomorrow I'm like, no, I'm good. I don't
I
feel that way.
I think that I would tell 20-year-old us, you know, we made choices um that that like we went to counseling once and then didn't continue because
We
we
moved.
couldn't afford it,
Yeah.
and then
Then we
we ended up
moved. Yeah.
moving. But I wish that we would have known what investing in our emotional health then
Yeah. The
could
benefits it
have,
would have paid.
the benefits that it would
Yeah.
have paid. Because I mean, we always look back and we think, remember we sat down with that one guy and he's like, if you would put away $25 a week,
Yeah.
to,
Oh yeah,
for
we said
retirement,
exactly.
we would have like, I don't know, $7 million
I would have
or
been a
something
millionaire
like
by
that.
40 years of age. I'm like, 40 years? Jesus, coming back way before that. You know what I mean? And here I am 52. You know, I'm like, dang it. You know? Yeah, I mean, that's the truth. Just the wisdom of that moment. You know, he was like, if you could just put away, it was a Primerica. I don't even know if it was probably a Ponzi scheme. I don't know. But
But it was $25 a week,
it was,
and we just
it was
thought there's
something,
no
and we're just
way
like,
we
oh
could
my
do
goodness,
$25 a week.
$25. Now for me, that was like a fourth of my paycheck. You know, that was a lot. So, um, you know,
But I wish we would have known,
right.
to invest in our emotional health.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also think that it's like that old statement of when the student's ready, the teacher will appear. I wonder sometimes if we had if people who resist care like that, counseling, they're just not ready for it. And while I like to look back and go, I look at Waylon as a 20-year-old and go like, man, he could have really benefited from some truth and some perspective and some good, I mean, all in the realm of counseling and care. Like he could have really benefited. Probably he'd have been a better husband. He'd have been a better, you know, person all the way around. Am I boring you? Or are you just
No,
yawning at me?
we're doing an afternoon recording.
I have that
It's
effect
like
on her.
nap
Sometimes
time.
she's like, "Ah, wrap it up, bro." Yeah, seriously. What is that
Sorry.
all about? You see what I put up with? Like, yeah, she just yawns at me. I'm
So
kidding.
sassy
It
today.
was the cake. So you should know better. Okay, I'll like she literally fed me a buntini, not actually a buntlet. It's the middle sized. So that's how you know. But anyways, back to the conversation. I don't know that we would have been. It wasn't as accepted.
I think I would have been. I was very concerned about the
Yeah, the
expense.
image. Oh yeah, yeah,
Like for me.
yeah, yeah. The expense.
Yeah.
Well, it's probably because I was, not making very much money, which is another thing I think I would do differently. Is
Why don't you tell the story about how
well, after I was in a tragic accident, there's a part of my brain that got damaged, and yeah. So, you know, I had the opportunity to go into ministry after we were married. I made a really quick individual, what really turned out to be a very selfish decision. Although we might both agree that it was the right choice, the way I went about it was a very selfish sort of approach. I just made the decision. My boss came to me that day and said, "Hey, you could stay." And we had been praying about going into ministry and desiring ministry, and I'd had literally dreams about it. Felt like the Lord had spoken, and we had discussed all that stuff, and we were actively involved in leading, volunteer wise at some level in a church setting. And my boss came to me and said, "Hey, you can stay here and make less money, or you can quit." And they were trying to get me to quit because it was a change in the company and all that, and I hated the job anyway, so it wasn't a hard decision. So I just was like, "Peace them out," and quit my job to go into without a real promise of going into full time ministry with a financial and to which that financial piece again because of the day and the positioning and all that it was sorely inadequate. So I would say, lessons learned through that, I would say is I don't know that we would have done it differently. And maybe you think otherwise. I'm certainly open to that. But I think how I went about it, I literally pulled up to the place that she worked, walked in unannounced. She worked at a printing, publishing, or it was an insurance company.
advertising agency?
Advertising agent. I knew it was one of those three. And they're kind of all the same thing. They were advertising for insurance, is what it was. But no, they weren't. But she worked there, and I literally like show up on her doorstep, like, "Hey, guess what? Raise your hand if you're employed." Didn't raise my hand, and so that was a real shock. I mean,
It was a
obviously
real
at that
shock.
point,
Yes.
yeah. So how would you have had me do that? Looking back at where we are today and the significance of those seasons in our life,
Hmm.
what would you have had me do differently?
I would have loved to have been involved in that
Yeah.
decision.
See, I agree with that. I agree with that.
I
I'm sorry I did that to you. I really am.
forgive you.
I'm a pretty
I think
person.
that's the first time you've apologized for
Yeah,
that.
well, here at 52, 35 years later, there we go, baby. You got it. Like, yeah, I am sorry. And have been sorry for. I probably haven't said it, but I am sorry. I have been sorry for a lot of years for that, just because it was very immature, very selfish. Truthfully, just focused on. I didn't, but of course, we've talked a lot about my capacity to understand, like, what is this marriage thing like. I didn't have a clue. Although my parents are married, they're great. They love each other. For the most part, you know what I mean? As far as I could tell, and I think that believers, all that stuff like that. But I think I just really had no clue on what it was, the selflessness that's demanded in marriage, of making choices or not making choices without like stopping. I would never do something like that today.
Well, I would hope not.
Well, I mean, come on, be
You
fair. Like
wouldn't.
I wouldn't. I think in the last probably 25 years, I would never do something, or 20 years at least, or more. I think I would never make. It was such a rash decision, and
Yeah. Yeah.
really, really impulsive in many, many,
Yeah.
many regards. But
Yeah.
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 So, but what would you do different besides that fact of like we should have said, okay, let's sit and talk about it. Which there was nothing that said we couldn't. It was just totally my bad. It was
Yeah.
totally me.
I would have loved the opportunity to have a plan because
Yeah.
from that day, I
Yeah.
went to working as much overtime as I could, as many
Sure.
hours as I could. And so,
We went into survival mode at that point,
yeah.
which probably created more stress for you.
Hmm.
Um, I think maybe not. I don't know.
It created a lot of stress
Yeah.
because we had a mortgage and
Yeah.
car payments, and I was really the only
Yeah.
income.
Legitimate income for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. And so it threw us into a situation where I start doing anything that I can to make money as well as working, delivering
And
papers and, that sort of thing.
I did learn that, your commitment level, because
Yeah.
even before they started giving you a paycheck, you showed up every day at the church
Yeah.
at 8 in the morning and you stayed till 5. Just, I don't even know what you were doing when you were there, but you would do that
I was hiding from you.
all
That's
day.
what I was doing.
Well, I was at work.
Well, I know, but I was hiding because I'm at work. I'm busy, babe. Get big things happening. Like, bring it. Yeah. Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you'd actually try to make money outside of those
Right.
hours.
Yeah.
So
I remember doing things like, I remember somebody asking me, like, hey, could you build this boxer?
deck on the back
Yeah. And I'm
of
like,
our
sure,
house.
I'm your guy. You know what I mean? Like, can I borrow your hammer? Like legit. I'm like, that thing is probably, it's either still standing because I use, 16 penny nails or whatever it is, or it's completely, somebody died when they stepped on it. But man, I was about it. I was like, I was going to do whatever it
Yep.
took. I mean, I am a
Yep.
committed individual for sure. Once I'm in, I'm in.
Yep.
And I was in. But yeah, I mean, I think, it probably, I used to deliver papers in the middle of the night in what is legitimately the hood. I mean, like it was rough. I mean, it was scary at times. I did a lot of praying in tongues in the middle of the night down in a pretty drug infested part of Kansas City. But for sure. So yeah, I think, communication was never really something we, and I think that communication piece is so important because we would both talk, but I think we both struggled with hearing, understanding, giving space, giving grace. We were so busy trying to, get ourselves out of this pressure cooker. It was just tough. So yeah, make sure you communicate. Make sure you're making those decisions together. I think I would tell myself like, hey, it's okay to slow down and and have a conversation. And the Lord might just, I've always respected your walk with the Lord and your ability to hear God. I mean, I always have. It wasn't I didn't respect that. I just think I got so caught up in like, this is it. We got to go. And it was just kind of a whiplash experience probably for you. And fortunately, we didn't have kids at that time, so and I may have thought differently if we had kids. Like it would have just been too much to even step out into. I mean, I just figured with me and you, we could just do it. I still think that. I'm still that way with me and you. We're like, we'll just do it. We'll figure it out. Like, if we're gonna do it, we'll just do it. You know what I mean? And we pretty much do. I mean, that kind of how it works. Works out well. God is interesting in how He puts people together that have this ability to kill each other, but the ability to do great things. It's all in how you channel it. You know what I'm saying? It's all in how you channel that deal. So, yeah. What else? What else do you think?
What else?
I have one. I think that. Well, there's a couple I would think, and they're kind of tied together. One, I think I was very ambitious in ministry, especially, and I think I was very, very, very driven. And I say ambitious because I felt like, as most young leaders, young people are, they're trying to prove themselves. They're trying to, you know, really prove their worth. And because of my own insecurities and all of that struggle and the pressure, I'm always trying to prove my worth to God, prove my worth to people. They give me this opportunity to do this job, and I want to prove to you made the right decision, and you know what I mean. And so I think the ambition of it all, like trying to build something, um, was probably really misappropriate, misplaced. And I would say to that, I would go back and be like, just again, slow down, take a break, take a day off, because we never took days off. And some of that was because of our financial position. Like the day off was like, I'm gonna go find somebody who needs a deck and build it for them. You know?
Well, and because you weren't making much, and I had a really great job, and so I used my vacation time to be the youth pastor's wife and go to camp or go on a retreat or
Everything your heart ever
whatever.
dreamed for.
Yes,
Taking 50 kids to camp in the
or
Ozarks.
going to camp
Yes.
with all the kids.
Yeah, and it was just so, it was just really a one-sided probably season for us, especially given that you were in this paradigm of like the wife has got to just follow this joker around subserviently and not have an opinion. And then I'm just kind of like off doing the thing that I've always done in terms of, in terms of ministry. It's all I've ever known, like not leading it, but being in it. So well, that's what you got to do. And then there's an ambition in it that makes you want to be successful rather than, and it wasn't that we didn't love people. We love people. We loved every season we've been in. We love people. We have relationships from every one of those. We have people we still talk to from every one of those eras.
Sarah Watson.
Yeah. I mean, Michael
Call
and
us later.
Sarah. And yeah, I mean, we do. And I think about just the people that we still are connected, that were kids, that were literally 12 years old, we started, and they taught us it's like your kid teaches you how to be a parent. Like they taught us how to pastor, throughout a lot of those years. And so
They endured us
they really
being their
did.
youth
They really
pastors.
did. Like, but we did love them. I mean, we
Yeah,
still do, but I mean,
absolutely.
like we were in it for, I feel like, all the craziness aside and some of that ambition that I struggled with. I think it wasn't lost on, like, I didn't use people to accomplish that thing. It was just like, I tried to just, we're always going to take a hill. And I think there's a difference between obeying God and following God and doing it at a pace that is realistic rather than just,
I think
blazing out,
that's the key, is like we never slowed down.
yeah. Didn't take vacations, never took time off, never, again, some of that's being, not having a lot of money and even not really acceptable in those days.
Right. I was going to say some of it was, I don't even know that we had vacation time
Yeah.
when we first started
No,
out.
we didn't.
Like, I don't think they.
Any vacation time would have been like, yeah, go do what you want. You're not getting paid. But
Yeah, it would have been.
yeah, I don't ever remember a conversation with my pastor or any oversight or leader saying like, "Hey, man, are you taking breaks? How are you doing it? How's the pressure of all this?" Again, going back to that help, and I'm not saying it's their fault because they might have readily made it available if I had sought it out. I don't know. I'm not going to blame somebody else. Sometimes I think that's a danger in what we do. I see a lot of that in our culture today is we got to create a villain in somebody else so that we don't deal with our own darkness. And my thing was like, I was willing to be ambitious and go at it, just work, workaholic. I used to call it the treadmill of perfection. Just, I'm just going to keep going. And a lot of that was my own internal relationship with God. Like I'm going to prove to God that he chose the right one to be in ministry. And
But I don't even remember. I don't remember our pastors taking vacation.
yeah, very rarely. I mean, very rarely.
Maybe if it was like a family function.
Yeah.
Would have been the only time that
Yeah.
I.
It was not a common occurrence to think like, "Hey, I'm gonna be out." It's like it was back in the days where you couldn't tell the people at the church you're going on vacation because people, wouldn't come to church because you were I'm like, "If you're coming to church for me, like, something wrong with that." Seriously, like you should be coming to gather to worship, to serve, be a part of the body, like community. And whether I'm there or not is irrelevant. You know what I mean? In that regard. I mean, I'm there most time. There are times I come. I think it freaks people out a little bit in our church. Like there's times I come to church and when I'm not preaching and I'm just going to be a part of the church and just worship with the church and love on people and I'm like, I think that's incredibly healthy to like, I don't have to be in the pulpit to be here. Like it bothers some because they think, well, if you're here, you should be up there. And I'm like, yeah, no, I don't. That's not my identity. That is not my identity. That is what the Lord graces and gifts me for. So I think a lot of that I would have those conversations. Like, hey, you're going to be all right. God's going to use you. He's going to use you more than you deserve. He's going to take care of you. But it's not going to be your ambition. Because those things that are built by the ambitions of men, the flesh of men, when you step away from them, they collapse. And that's what I've seen. I think a lot of churches are built that way, like a very charismatic leader, not that I was charismatic, but like a very strong leader, built on the wrong things and they step away from it by their own doing or sometimes have to be forced to step away from it and the whole thing just house of cards just collapses. And so I think living in such a way that like, in our conversation with the staff today, Jesus built for his absence, not for his presence. Like he built the disciples, like, I'm going away. You're going to have the Holy Spirit. I expect you to do greater things, than you're seeing me do. And here's how I'm going to set you up to do that. And then I'm going and I'm building it with that in mind rather than building with, I've got to be here and be the man. A lot of churches, that's the center of it is like, I've got to be the man. And it's really selfish ambition. I mean, it really is. It can be an insecurity thing. It can be an ego thing. And obviously I'm not casting stones because I've had my seasons of it where, it was feeding me. But I think whenever we're doing something like that that feeds us, that's a bad sign. That's like that will eventually run out. It won't feed you anymore, and you have to look for something else. You know, I think the other part is just that Sabbath concept of like we really didn't understand, the principle of the Sabbath and rest
Mhm.
and margin.
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
felt like if you're resting, you're being lazy.
Mhm. It's always funny to me that it's one of the big 10
Yeah,
commandments, and we
right. We
never talked
disregard it.
about it.
It's actually in the Ten Commandments, right? We never talked about it, and it's the most. It's the commandment with the most description and articulation of any of them. Do not kill. Thou shalt not kill. Okay, like thou shalt not murder. Um, like that's pretty clean cut forth. And God goes into this like, you know, this whole explanation about the Sabbath. And it's like he really goes in on that, and we just don't talk about it. We just don't spend any time. And again, not to get into legalism, because I know some people that it's like legalism for them, like they can't do anything on that day. And I think, I just always go back to Jesus' words, like the Sabbath's made for you. You weren't made for the Sabbath. So if I'm serving the Sabbath, I have to do these things to make the Sabbath happy, then I've got it backwards. It's supposed to be a blessing to me. It's supposed to be, I think for us, for me especially, I don't know about you, but besides just the rest, and again, if you're we kind of tend to be a you know, high energy type couple of people in terms of like our energy to get stuff done. And I think you can easily feel like you're just being lazy you know, if you're not doing something. Um, the other component, and I saw something to this effect on a statement from I think it was in Pete Scazzero's. It was somebody else he quoted, but he was talking about all of all of the churches, and this is a pretty strong statement. But he said all of the churches struggles today are directly connected with our inability to sit quietly before the Lord, like this whole rest, solitude, quietness. I'm like, that's pretty strong, but I don't completely disagree with that. Our ability to realize it's not about us. I think that also addresses that insecurity piece of like, it's not about me. I'm not going to be the one making the universe work today. That's God's job. You know what I mean? And I think for us, like that Sabbath concept, just always thinking you have to be on. Even when you're not on, you're thinking about being on. Um, and I think for me, a massive sort of breakthrough for me happened when I came to this understanding of like, with Israel, um when they collected manna on the Sabbath, it rotted. It was not productive. When Israel would in the Sabbath years, when they would bypass God's law and go ahead and do their thing, it never produced what it produced for. I mean, you have to understand there would have to have been enough produced on the day before the Sabbath, for it to carry them all the way through that day, the Sabbath, and candidly some of the next day. So a 3 day, and they're counting a 3 day span. So there has to be a really exponential harvest here to get you through, whether it be the years, whether it be the days. Like God gives you more here to get you through, right? He's going to sustain you. And when I came to this understanding of like whatever work I do that is my work on the Sabbath will never be productive. You are wasting your energy. That's when I started going like, I am not one to waste my energies, you know. Um, so it's better for me to rest. Better for me to take the time and just, you know, be in this place of peace and rest and relationship with God and my family or my friends and whatever that looks like. And again, people always ask that question. Well, what do you do on your Sabbath? And it's important. I didn't come up with it, but the important thing is what do we not do? It's not about what we do; it's about what we don't do. We just simply don't work. And by work, that means whatever it is that you derive your harvest, your income, your resource from. So if you're a car salesman, there should be one day every seven you're not selling cars or thinking about selling cars. If you're a nurse, there should be a day where you're not nursing or thinking about nursing or, that sort of thing. It's got to be a break for you to go, hey, this is obviously time for me and the Lord, worship, that sort of thing. Um, family, food, all that. It's supposed to be a day of celebration, blessing, presence of God, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And I have found that um, that the rest of my week goes so much better when I don't violate that Sabbath. And there are always going to be the exceptions. When your donkey falls in a ditch.
I was I was waiting to see what you're going to say. Yeah,
There's always going to
sure.
be
I mean,
something.
even Jesus gave those exceptions.
Yes,
Like,
that it comes up, and God's grace covers that when it's the exception.
yeah,
And so I just know that whether it's things, I don't have to work as hard, things fall into
right, right,
place. Whatever it is, the rest of my week goes so much better
yeah,
when I prioritize that
for sure.
that Sabbath. And
Yeah. So looking back in those years, I mean, I would probably said, "Hey, man, um, take it easy, take a break, like take some time off, trust God in this. It's not about you." And I think that probably would have done so much for, I think sometimes the other part of this is they're kind of connected in the sense that we really busy ourselves so that we don't have to stop and think about that pressure cooker. You know what I mean? It's genius. We just keep adding more pressure to it, thinking somehow the pressure is going to dissipate instead of like going, wait a minute, I got to stop, slow down, consider this, ponder this, get with the Lord. And if he goes, hey, you need to get some, might need to get some help on this, might need to get another Jesus with skin on person in your life, that can help you walk through it. They're kind of connected. I think if we had probably found one, it would have probably led us quicker to the other, as well as, depressurizing all those years. Um,
so basically, to sum it up,
are we summing it up?
I think we should
Yeah.
sum it up.
Well, I would say I have one more. I would say this. This is just purely, well, not I have more than one more, but I think purely. I think there's a lot of things we did right in our 20s. I think we by the grace and help of God, I think there's a lot of things that we learned. We learned things like fasting and prayer, and we learned things like commitment. I mean, there's a lot of things that you know, um, we worked hard. We weren't lazy. We did those things. You know what I mean? And I don't say that to toot our horn, but I just think like it wasn't that it was all you
Yeah,
know.
it wasn't just like a worthless decade for
Yeah,
us.
yeah. Well, I was thinking about this decade thing. I've talked about this a little bit. Um, and what I was going to say is I would have developed and established better health routines, physical health routines as well.
100%.
Because, the longer you wait in life to develop those, the harder it is to do that. And I've always had some kind of regimen of exercise kind of worked in there here and there, but nothing really in those years probably were my worst years. You know what I mean? I mean, yeah, that they were my worst years.
They were
Yeah,
they were I would say they were
I
your
was
worst
definitely
years.
mine worst.
My worst was probably in my
Yeah,
30s.
health wise, weight wise, just all of
The
it.
things you used to eat in your 20s,
Yes, Lord.
terrible.
Yeah. I could it was just I had zero discipline about like what I put into my body and or didn't. And again, that's probably pretty true of most 20-year-olds. And again,
Exactly.
your body's different than you burning up all your, I mean, I was skinny as a rail until I wasn't, you know what I mean? And then I was like, I didn't know a man could have stretch marks in those places. But I mean, it's like, um, all things considered, I'm like, man, if I had established some more routines, eating wise, health wise, taking care of myself, it would have been easier to do that. And I feel like I'm a fairly disciplined person.
You're like hyper disciplined.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a word, but
Well, I don't know if I'm hyper disciplined, but I like when I make up my mind, like we're doing this, I'm doing this. You know what I mean? I just wish I would have made up my mind earlier. And so that because there was times like just feeling horrible, like, and obviously that's all going to play into your marriage relationship and your sex life and all those things. Like it's just feeling horrible and feeling just carrying too much weight, what it does to your body. And again, I'm not talking about like, you know, the person who struggles with a thyroid or whatever. I'm just talking about like we live in a culture today that
everything
we
is.
just indulge all excess all the time. And so I think I wish I would have I would tell myself, hey, get an established sort of pattern now because it'll be easier. when you're 30, 40, and 50 and staying on that
or
thing.
maintain.
Yeah.
Because I had great physical
Yeah.
like patterns in
Yeah.
school,
Yeah. Highly, active and athletic and all
and
that.
then got married, and my just natural metabolism carried me
Yeah. For a while.
for my 20s,
Yeah.
and then 30s was like super
Yeah.
difficult.
And I think for a woman, I mean, having babies and all that stuff, there's certainly a massive, I figured you'd say something in that long lines of get your hormones checked in those early years,
Not in your
not
20s.
your 20s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought we were talking about our 20s.
Well,
I bang the table about get your hormones checked for 40s.
yeah.
But
So I think probably establishing some health routine would be, I would go back and say, hey, man, let's lay off the deep fried foods a little bit and let's choose some, because you can change your appetites. You can change your food desire for foods to be others. We've done that and we are now that way, and I think
I
without,
would have said, no, I'm not buying Pepsis and Hostess for you to eat in bed
yeah,
before
okay.
we go to sleep.
Sometimes you just need a Pepsi and a ding dong before you go to bed. That's all I'm saying. She didn't want to say ding dong, but that's what they used to be
I didn't,
called.
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hostess. People are like, what's a hostess? Like, it's the little tinfoil covered chocolate piece of heaven. You know what I'm talking about? And it's best served with Pepsi right before you fall asleep. That's the best thing. And you don't need to brush your teeth because it'll form a natural coating over your teeth. The Pepsi actually just fuses the sugar away. And so I don't know how it works. It's crazy, but it may not be scientific, but it worked. I've never had cavities. That's all I'm saying. So
That is a true
that's
statement.
a true statement. So the Lord is good to the ignorant, I suppose. But yeah, good Lord. I wish I'd have probably established a little better health habits. So the thing is, we talk about this a lot, and we can wrap this thing up. But the 20s, the crisis is it starts actually before your 20s. It's actually starting way earlier, I think, with the advent of social media and all that, because there's all this bombarding of information. But the crisis that we often talk about in the 20s is the crisis of identity. When you're a teenager, starting your teens, goes your 20, you are figuring out, who am I? What do I believe? What am I gonna, married or unmarried? Are we gonna have kids? Am I gonna work a job or be a stay at home? Am I gonna be, even in your faith? Am I a Christian? Am I not? This all really starts really percolating and hopefully gets sort of settled in your 20s. Now, I think what we're seeing happen is I think we're seeing adolescence prolonged because of our culture, because of things like social media, because our culture, like, I don't want to work a job. And so we have 28-year-olds acting like, 19-year-olds, you know what I'm saying? And living with mom and dad, not, and that's not bad in terms of like, if you're, we tell our kids as they're young adults, you can live with us as long as you're bettering your life, if it's going to school or saving money for a house or saving money for, down payments or whatever, that's great. We're here to help you. But if it's just like one of those, like, you just live here to live off of us and make a full paycheck or don't have a job, like that's a no-go, because it's not contributing to your maturity, but that crisis is identity, figuring out who you are, your family of origin starts showing up in relationships, dating relationships, maybe marriage. And so I think it's hopefully we get work through that in identity and we settle who we are. I am Waylon Sears, married, committed to my wife, committed to Jesus, ministry, whatever that looks like, called to ministry, at the end of my 20s, a dad, what does that mean? Who am I going to be? But what it does is it gives way to the 30s, which then becomes the crisis of roles and responsibilities. Because now you have a job, you have a wife, you have kids, you got a dog, whatever that, or whatever. I mean, if you're weird, you have a cat. You know what I'm saying? That's for you. So, or two, just one cat. One got eaten by a coyote. See that? That's sad for the coyote. They're bad. He should learn how to. I'm just kidding. No, that is sad. I'm sorry your cat got eaten by a coyote. I am sorry for you, not for your cat, because you're, whatever. It's just an animal. So, anyways, but don't comment on that. Anyways, so, but I am not saying cats go to hell, but I have said it in the past. But anyways, but it's this challenge of roles and responsibilities, right? how do I do all this now? You know, 40s becomes that crisis of character. You know, um, what all the stuff I've worked to get here, am I going to maintain those character things in this era, or do I need to start cutting corners because I'm starting to feel the pressure and feel like I need to be successful, but time's running out because I'm 40 now. Like that's so old. You know, I remember hitting 40. You know, it really didn't phase us that much. I mean, honestly, we've always kind of figured age is an age. You know, 50s and 60s become kind of about legacy. What am I leaving behind? You know, we're living the life now with grandkids, and we're like, this is the best because we're not worried about the roles, we're not worried about our identity, not worried about our integrity. We are who we are. We live how we live. What we're looking at is just going like, we're just want to help pour into these grandkids, pour into this little girl, pour in, you know what I mean? And just love her and do the, you know, just help her parents however we can. They're doing a great job, but we're just here to, you know, speak life and encourage and make sure she knows that she's loved and the best thing on the planet and that sort of thing. And so far, I think we're doing pretty well. I think she's got a pretty strong self-esteem. So strong will and self-esteem at this point. But you know what I'm saying? She's not scared of nothing. And so she will literally tell you that if you ask her. So the thing is like the legacy piece of it. And I think the problem is, I would say to myself in my 20s, is we're thinking about legacy way too late. Because if I had gone back and thought about what am I leaving, which is hard to do at 20, because you're just thinking like, I'm here to conquer the mountain. But you're like, at some point, you're going to get there, whatever that is. And you're going to be looking back going like, what did I do along the way that I would do differently? And the legacy that I've left, because it hasn't always been great. And not every relationship is still intact. You know, not every relationship is still whole. And there's some of those that we're like, oh man, I really love them, but the relationship is just broken at this point. There's nothing we can really do about it. Or it's just dissipated, you know? And so I think it's
I
trying
think
to,
even with our kids,
sure.
like if I would have thought
Oh
about it,
man. Like, yes, for sure.
I think, I was so concerned about th- that day,
Yeah.
like do the right thing today and not be concerned about like, well, how about I help you come to your own decision about,
Yeah. Don't you wish you could be grandkids to your kids or grandparents to to your kids?
oh, that would have been magical.
You know, you just turn into this coach, this, you know, still guidelines, still boundaries. We don't, you know, but I mean, it's like your whole demeanor is just so different.
Yeah.
And again,
You're
that's
like, there's like just natural
seriously,
volume flowing through your
yeah, like
veins.
you could care less. The stuff that doesn't matter, you just don't care. Like, you know, you know, Brandy, we were laughing because what was she eating? Chocolate. She had I was feeding her chocolate covered bananas or whatever. And we're just munching down on whatever. Of course, she gets it on her hand and she just walks over to my wall and just goes and wipes her hand. And I'm like, I don't care. You know what I mean? Like, we'll
I
wipe
just
it off.
got a wet wipe, came right off. Not a problem.
Yeah, that's what water and paper towels and paint is for. Like, it's okay. And I just think, man, back in the day as a parent,
Oh, I'd
like
have lost it.
you could just get so crazy with your kids about stuff like that. And I just thought it's so funny how, you know, like we probably have more than we've ever had, but we care less about it than we've ever cared in that regard. You know what I'm saying? And so I just think the legacy piece of it, you're keeping the bigger picture in mind, not focused on the little insignificant stuff that becomes this huge point of crisis that doesn't need to be. Yeah. Awesome. Well, next week we'll talk about what do we do in our 30s. It's everything times 2 in the 30s. So I mean, it's, you know, that's the parenting era for us. That's, you know, probably the end of that is when we really started the health journey and growing in that regard. And, you know, yeah, I think it was late 30s, probably in that range. We initially, but really didn't. I mean, it's been decades. But anyways, well, hey, thanks for hanging out with us today and enduring our silliness. And hopefully this helps you. Hopefully, even if you're not 20, and this is what I'd say: if you're not 20, don't live in regret. You know, we don't live in our lives looking back, going like, oh, you know, you fix what you can. The beauty is, I think there's been so many conversations with our kids. Our kids joke a lot now with our youngest son, Judah, who's 17, still in the home, going to be a senior this year. And the other kids will gather around him like a gang of, misfits. And they'll be like, your parents are so much more healthy than they were with us, you know? And Judah's like, "But,
You have completely different parents
Yeah.
than we had.
yeah. And so that's probably true on some
It is
level. I
true.
mean,
Uh-huh.
you know, and so I think that, you can always change it. It's never too late. And again, we've had dozens of conversations with each of our kids, like going back, like, yeah,
Sorry about that.
yeah, my bad. And that's not just
That's the best you can
dismissive.
do.
I think
No,
that's what we
not at
can
all.
do. We can just
It
come
is
back and
what
go
we
like,
can
no,
do.
I was really wrong. That was
Yeah.
probably not cool. If I had to do that over again, I would do it differently. That really wasn't you. That was me. And so I think even if you're not 20 and you're listening, there's still time to go back and recapture some of these things. Don't wait. Don't live in regret. Don't live in the shame of it all. That does no good. But take action where you're at today and see what the Lord can do to help you in this process, because He will, and you can walk out the next season better than this one. So, well, thanks for hanging with us today. And if you liked it, you can pass it along. You can like it. That'd be great for us. Helps us to reach more people. And we look forward, as always, to joining you at the table just to have some real conversations. Hope it's been a blessing. And we look forward to seeing you next time.